Welcome to the Dental Decoders podcast. I'm your host, Brittany Rogars, and I'm here to help you crack the code on all things dental operations. Each week, we dive into topics to help you overcome roadblocks, streamline operations, and reduce team burnout. Whether you're an owner, a practice manager, or a team member, this podcast is for you. Join us for insightful discussions, engaging interviews, and practical tips. So sit back and relax as we crack the code on all things dental operations together.
Good day to all of our Dental Decoder listeners. We're so happy to have you on our show today. We are so lucky to have Briean Clark with us today from Pivotal Solutions. Welcome, Brianne.
Thank you. Thank you, Rebecca and Brittany, for having me.
We're so glad you're here. You have been so busy and out and about and sharing all of your great gems. Most recently, you were doing one of your conferences out in Hershey, Pennsylvania, and we would love to hear all about it. And what were some of your takeaways from the conference?
You're right. I definitely have that sense and that feeling of things are definitely getting busier. I actually had a wonderful phone call the other day with some of the study club presidents and board members, and they were just complimenting my brand and my reputation and how they're seeing me in so many places. So I really was on cloud nine, hearing that my effort and my message and my brand is getting out there and people are seeing what I'm doing. Because you never know when you're out there just putting your message out into the world, like who is it really getting in front of and is it working? So I am hearing more and more about what I'm doing is working. So, and I loved, I guess we could say the marketing around the Hershey event was like, I love to be creative and fun, and just what more could you ask for to be in a place where there's amusement, there's spas, there's restaurants, there's shopping, there's all the team activities that are needed. And we had so much fun being in Hershey. And my co-host Elaine, I will give her a shout out because you know how there's always the crazy behind the scenes that no one really sees. And bless her heart, she was on the way to the airport at 3:00 in the morning and got a flat tire. And she ended up missing her flight. I'm waking up the day of our event, or I should say the day before our event, thinking that I'm going to be driving to the airport to pick her up. But I wake up to see the text message that she had missed her flight. And I was like, okay, we're going to stay calm. This is fine. The poor thing, she slept for a couple hours, and then her and I were going back and forth about other flights or driving or what do we do? And she actually rented a car and she drove the whole day from very southern North Carolina, and it took about 10 hours because of stopping for rest and whatnot. But we got her there and she got herself there, and you would have never even known that we had that slight hiccup right beforehand. So there's always that thing, right? And I always compare events to weddings. You work so many days, so many hours thinking of all the details, planning all of the things. And there's going to be that snafu, or there's going to be that one thing you forgot, or there's going to be that one family member that just messes something up. But it could not have gone any better for us. We had an amazing, fun day. We have just stacks and stacks of positive reviews and feedback and comments, and that's what makes it so worth it to me, is to see that the message that we had and that we shared, it really was something people needed to hear. It was something that was going to change their life professionally and help transform their practices and ultimately trickle down to how their patient's life is. So, and then there were also characters. We had the characters stop in and hug and say hi. So you asked about Hershey, and that's what it was. It was just an amazing day. So I'm very pleased.
That's amazing.
So fun. I have to jump really fast because I know I got really excited about your Hershey event. But Brianne, tell us what it is that you do with Pivotal Solutions, and tell us a little bit about you and your dental journey for our listeners who may not know a lot about you.
Sure, not a problem. Pivotal Solutions is my company where I'm actually working to make an impact in dentistry and with practices and their team members to where whatever we're doing or whatever we're thinking, there just has to be a better way, or I need help. Like, I step in and I am that support. I am that help. I am that coach. And to me, since my background goes all the way from assisting chairside to working front office to then overseeing operations and being in management to then coaching and teaching, I feel as if I'm one of the team. You know, I can be so relatable to the problem that they're having or the experience that they're going through or the circumstances that they're surrounded by. And that's where I just get very passionate and I roll up my sleeves and I jump right in with them to work through any problems that need to be solved or really solutions. My friends always joke, there's a meme out there floating around where my face is on vanilla ice and it's, if you have a problem, she can solve it. And I, of course, like to make learning fun. But I have been fortunate to where I've been speaking or coaching since about 2015. And then just in the last almost 2 years now, I've been able to coach and train and speak full time. And it's been just such confirmation that everything I went through in my 2 decades of dentistry, every problem I faced, every crisis we survived, everything that I helped the team navigate through, the blood, sweat, and tears, literally. I've taken all of that and now I can help save people from experiencing that too. Like, I can save them that time. I can save them the stress. I can save them the grief in a sense and say, well, let's get from here to here. And you don't have to go through all that messy stuff. Like, I have done this, I have figured it out, and I'm here to show that best practice, that best method to you. And aside from all of those things with Pivotal Solutions, I've also branched out into my Pivotal presentations coursework, where my biggest passion is what we're saying to the patient, but how we're saying it to the patient. So I'm transforming and making pivotal changes to the way we have case presentations, all the way from the conversation in the operatory. Like, how are we talking about that condition? How are we motivating them to do something about the diagnosis? And then transferring that trust from the clinical area to the front office, and then the actual preparation and presentation of that. I'm doing big things, exciting things, and I'm trying to take over the dental industry one practice at a time or one workshop at a time. Because again, from my transition from dental assistant to front office and being liked and loved and, you know, celebrating a great result from a case, I was like getting yelled at and hated and not liked by patients. So that was a big deal to me. So I really thought to myself, like, there has to be a better way to have these insurance conversations. There has to be a better way to have these treatment conversations. There has to be a way to not be that middleman getting blamed. And how can I shift that responsibility from me back to the insurance company or to the patient? And that's what I'm really working to share, this message of how do we present treatment plans based on only the allowance. Even as a PPO, I'm teaching practices to have first conversations of their treatment plans using only the allowance. So we can figure out the dentistry important to the patient. And once we understand that, then we can move into the conversations about their estimated portions on. So big, long story, but a lot of big, great, wonderful things happening and going on. And it's been a journey for me through dentistry, I will say. Lots of tears, lots of questioning myself of like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? And then I share that in all of my workshops. Like, I start off with this story about my journey of how I went from an oral surgery assistant to expanded functions to, hey, we should cross-train you for the front office, to then going into managing the practice and operations, and then how that blossomed into coaching. So I do have that story that I share. And looking back, it's a beautiful story. So it's just been great. And I'm so happy that I have put in the work and have had the drive and determination to push through all the things that I went through so I can help others out there that are like me. So it's been so fantastic.
That's
it's
so
okay. Get a tissue. It's
yeah,
fine.
right. I know. I'm getting all teary eyed here. I really appreciate you sharing and being vulnerable on your side of the story with there's been growth and there's been change and it's been hard and I've second guessed myself. So I think that's something that no matter what your position is even if you're outside of dentistry, that's something that you battle with. So I really appreciate
Yes.
you sharing that piece and just being vulnerable with us and our listeners. One of the reasons that I invited you on the show, where I reached out, was because we had so many people asking us more tangible things they can implement to improve their case acceptance. Case acceptance has become such a hot topic lately. It's a metric that everybody is starting to watch now, which is fantastic. And I stumbled upon your page and learned a little bit about you and your conversations surrounding case presentation and how to make the patient have that trust from the back to the front. So I'd love it if you could elaborate a little bit more on what that looks like and some small, easy things that offices can implement to improve their case acceptance.
Sure. And I do have many resources and things that can help, tips that I have, or worksheets with language that I recommend using. So if anyone would want to email me or send me a private message on Facebook, I am sending those resources out daily. So I'm happy to share that. But if you're asking for something that the team can go back to their practice and do to elevate their conversations with patients, I have so many popping into my mind, but I can tell you that one of my biggest beliefs is working to take the insurance responsibility off of us and giving it back to the patient. So we do so quickly pin ourselves to the wall in talking about patients' insurance. So we create that expectation from the patient that we know everything about their insurance. And when they get that bill in the mail or when something didn't pan out as we have said it did, patients are mad at us. And just depending on the conversation we're having with the patient, we may just have to take some responsibility into why they're thinking that. That's tough
Mm-hmm.
to think, but it's what did I tell the patient to make them think that this is my fault? So I can go into a couple things, but one of the first things that I encourage team members to do is to stop saying we, me, and I. Do not say we estimated your insurance. Do not say I estimated your insurance. We want to shift the language and actually say they, yours, or them, your insurance estimated contributing X dollars, or your insurance has paid less than they've estimated, or they paid less. I'm saying yours and they. So I'm shifting that responsibility as to this is not my decision. This is not anything I'm dictating. I'm actually, it's your insurance making this payment. I have heard many team members have this phone call with a patient. They call the office and they're answering it and they say, we estimated your insurance to be X dollars and they only paid X dollars. So sorry you have this bill.
Mm-hmm.
So if we are having that type of conversation where we are taking the responsibility, of course the patient's going to want to yell at us and the patient's not going to want to get involved and pick up the phone and call their insurance company and ask them, hey, why is there this clause, this limitation? What can I do in the future to not have a plan that has these exclusions? We're not teaching the patient to have the right questions for the right people, which is the employer or the insurance company. So I could go off on a tangent on that all day, but I also will say that when we have the information taken from the operatory to the front office, I also work with teams to have a very good detailed handoff. It's very challenging as a treatment coordinator or that front office team member that has to present the treatment plan, and we were not in the op. So we don't have the relationship. We don't have the understanding of what's motivating them. We haven't heard the clues from the patient as to why they would even want to do something about the conditions the doctor has. Having a good handoff from the back office to the front office, like what does that look like? What are the questions that we need to be asking one another? Ask yourself, am I having a good, successful conversation of what did we do today, what the patient needs to do next? Here are some of the patient's priority areas. Here are some of the objections that they had that we've already gone over. The option that they're leaning most towards is this. And also asking that front office team member, do you have any questions for me before I run back to the back office? So the conversation with the handoff, that's a key that can make a big difference. I actually have a client that I just shared with them, their reappointment rate went up 19% by having a successful handoff conversation, back office to front office. So it does make a difference to have that debriefing conversation with the team members. And then I also will say, I'll leave it at this, and if I'm telling too long of a story, you can tell me. But another thought that comes to my mind is when we as treatment coordinators are going into the consultation room, or maybe we don't have a consultation room, and you have to present there in the checkout area. I'll touch on that by saying, stand up from your chair and actually go around to the same side as the patient at the counter and stand beside them and with them. Don't stay seated in your chair and just slide a paper across your desk like you need all this stuff and it costs some money and I can schedule you. Go around to where the patient is and stand with them. But if you are able to go into a consultation room setting, you do have to stop and first build some rapport with that patient. Help them understand that they can not be on the defensive side or be heightened alert that there's this new person. Oh, here comes the money lady. Like I'm sure so many of us have heard that. But when you do go into the consultation room, I'm working with teams to actually first tell them what you're there to do. What is my role? I'm here to sit down and go over this treatment plan with you. I'm very confident that if you can tell me and share with me what's important to you, that I can find a way to make that happen for you. And we're actually having a conversation of, you met with Dr. Perfect today and talked about these problems. And after that conversation with Dr. Perfect, can you tell me what is your priority? And what is the goal you have for yourself? What would you like to see for yourself by the end of treatment? Because if you get that information from the patient before starting your presentation and you build the relationship, but now you have these clues and this information that you can actually use in the conversation when talking to the patient. Oh, if this is important to you, X, Y, and Z is why we should do that or whatnot. It's a little bit lengthier of a conversation, but those are some of the few things that come to my mind is, evaluate what does this process look like of the handoff? What does the process look like when I'm first sitting down with my patient? Am I setting the stage to have a strong conversation with building a relationship? And also, again, we go into the language that we're using. Are we building value to the service we're offering the patient and not minimizing what we're doing? And are we speaking to them in a way that the conversation will actually motivate them to accept care, accept treatment, schedule treatment, and pay for treatment? There's a lot more than, hey, my patient said yes and they scheduled. We now have to have strong financial conversations. We should take that opportunity to give them all the disclaimers about how we do help our patients at our practice. I can schedule your treatment as quickly or slowly as you're wanting to. Just please be aware that we do ask for 48-hour notice to change or postpone your visit. So we want to teach them in that moment. Yes, they've acknowledged things in the practice paperwork, but now that I'm sitting down with my patient, I'm going to be sure to go through my checklist of these disclaimers. I want to make sure this is how we help our patients here at our practice. So long story, but that's a few things that kind of came to my mind first. And all of the things that I'm mentioning, I do have some training resources for some introductory ideas and concepts of how can we have these conversations as a team so we can have the handoff be successful. So email me at pivotalsolutionsnow@gmail.com and I can send that to any of your listeners who would want to know more about how to have a successful handoff or whatnot.
Thank you. I will make sure I get that in the show notes. I really appreciate that you took, instead of just saying, here's what we need to do to get the patient to say yes when we're presenting treatment, I like that you have more of a holistic approach that kind of talks about the different phases, because I feel like so many people believe that case acceptance is only happening in that treatment planning room or in the consult room, that they forget that seed actually starts much earlier in the process. So I love that you took that holistic approach to your answer.
Yes. I actually have a great photo from Hershey. Someone actually snapped of me, and it's me with my slide that says case acceptance begins in the op. And I joke too, it is a team sport. Every person has a part in whether that patient says yes and schedules treatment. Every person has a role and plays a part in that.
Couldn't agree more, for sure. I'd like to ask you a question. A lot of offices now today are taking those pre-appointment reservations and taking that level of, we're going to take a part of the fee for the appointment in order for you to reserve a spot in the office for the appointment. I have heard a lot of pros and cons both ways. Do you see this as a pro for the dental practices as well as the patient to reserve the time by putting money down? And is this kind of the direction that offices are going in now?
From my point of view, and again, it's based on my experience of actually applying something in a practice and getting a team on board, getting patients on board, and seeing if it works or not. I will say from that experience, deposits and collecting that, it does work. It is effective. Mm-hmm. And patients are receptive to things depending on how you approach the conversation. If you have a team member that does not believe in it being right or correct to ask for a deposit from the patient, that's going to come through. That thought and that thinking is going to come through in how they're asking the patient, and it will come off negatively. If you're sitting there biting your nails, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, but we need a deposit now. The doctor's just making us do it, and people are canceling all the time, so we just have to ask people for money, and I'm so sorry. The patient's probably not going to be like, here's my card. So we have to have confidence and belief in it is the best thing for our patients. It is the best thing for the practice. It is the best thing for me as the scheduling coordinator or the treatment coordinator. Like, I want to lessen my stress or my workload of patients falling off the schedule, like, or someone committed to this time, but psych, I'm not coming. I just was saying yes to be nice. I didn't want to tell you no. So we do really need to pivot towards collecting deposits. And you would be so surprised when you first begin to implement that. Like, patients are used to booking reservations. Patients are used to making deposits. Patients are used to paying for a hotel room in full when they book it because it's only 3 weeks away from now, not 3 months. Yeah. So now we have different parameters of how much we need to collect. But I like shifting language. I actually have a presentation that I had done where it was from appointments to reservations to elevate our language, elevate the practice experience we're offering to our patients. That is free. To change your words, it's free. You don't have to have the $1 million machine. You don't have to have the $5,000 Google ad budget. Like, you literally can just start saying right now, I can make that reservation for you, Mr. Patient. We set appointments yesterday. We say reservations now. Update your paperwork. Update your appointment cards to say reservation. Your reservation is on. I'm also a big believer in not using the word cancellation. We don't teach or train our patients that we accept cancellations and canceling is okay. And so we want to say change or postpone. Like, that's language that I share and I teach. Like, we are expecting you at 2 p.m. on Friday. If you would need to change or postpone that, please, we do ask for 48-hour notice. So we're not reminding them, we're not holding their hand too much and putting all the responsibility on us, because heaven forbid our texting system is down and the reminders didn't go out, and so the patient just doesn't show up. Like, you didn't remind me. You committed to this time on the perfect schedule 6 months ago, and we were expecting you. It's all in the language. But to go back to your question of deposits, I'm a firm believer in that's a far more positive patient experience than allowing cancellations and then having the management and the responsibility of fixing that and trying to retrain the patients and having a very negative conversation. Almost really, we could just be honest with ourselves and say, it's a fight. We now have to fight with this patient. We have to argue with this patient because we have a broken appointment fee. Oh, you're canceling that? There's a fee. It's a far more negative conversation. Whereas if we've collected and it can be a small reservation deposit of $75 just to get the skin in the game, show the commitment. I've worked with some practices that they want to have a percentage down. We collect 25% down. We collect 50% down. The parameter can be whatever you want it to be. It just needs to be firm and understood and believed in by the team so that can translate to the patients well. So ask for the reservation deposit. You will see your open time units decrease. You will see your broken appointment rates decrease, because now when Sally calls me a day before, I could say, "Oh, are you sure there's nothing I can do to help you keep this reservation? It looks like we made this 3 months ago for you. And I would hate to see you not be able to apply the deposit that you paid." and then just pause and
Yeah.
let them say, oh yeah, I do. So I wouldn't get to use that $75 deposit. Unfortunately, we do ask, I don't even like the word unfortunately, but I'll say it in this situation. So, well, Sally, as you remember, we do ask for that 48-hour notice for changes or postponement to your care or your reservation, you should say, and then pause again. So you can see how the conversation could go much more different. And suddenly that last minute brunch someone booked with their friend and think they can just skip the dentist, they remember the importance of that commitment that they made. They keep the appointment. Or if something really has come up that they cannot, you would of course use your discretion of if it's a valid reason or not. And do I want this patient to forfeit this deposit and collect a new one? To reschedule, rebook, I say? Or can we, as a courtesy, I do understand your circumstances. Let's keep this deposit on file for you right now, and let's go ahead and find a new date and time. And then note the account so your team member knows that courtesy already took place. So if grandma dies for the 6th time, we all know.
Poor grandma.
Poor grandma. She's passed away like, 7 times. So, but you understand where I'm coming from, where patients do know and learn how to abuse the system or take advantage of our grace and our understanding. And we want to extend that understanding, extend that grace, but that does have to be cut off at certain points. So documentation in your software and communication with your team of what's going on, it's very key. Another long story, but to answer Rebecca's question, yes, to deposits, because you also get that pre-collection rate increasing and going up, and we can have patients choosing to prepay for their treatment in full entirely. Hey, let's go ahead and prepay for your treatment, and that would allow us to have that credit on file. We can pre-book multiple appointments, and you really just have your life under control. Like we all have had those patients that they have 2 phones and they got 6 calendars, and everybody's they love being able to book. They just love being able to book their next 5 or 6 dental visits and get their care started from start to finish. And there are some people. So as a practice, we can serve our patients that way. Why not? And we won't ever serve our patients that way if we're not asking and we're not offering. So we do need to have an idea of all the different offerings. Like, how can we help our patients? This is how we do that. Let me tell you about all of the ways we do that. And you choose. Because then we're giving the patient the right to make that decision, and then we're just the facilitator to make it happen that way for them. And that's where you get trust, you get good patient relationship, you get patients showing up for appointments. So it's a whole big thing. I call it the circle of life. There's so many conversations to have around it, but I think everyone seeing this should know that my stance is yes for deposits.
And if you aren't sure, please start the podcast over again and hear all of her stories in length.
If a guest is listening to this episode, they're really resonating to everything that you're saying, they want to learn more about you or working with you, where can they find you?
I'm pretty easy to find on Facebook. Is the world I live in when it comes to social media, and that is Pivotal Solutions. You look that up and you will see me right in the profile photo, so you can't miss me. So like and follow Pivotal Solutions. I do try to be rather active there. And I do have a private Facebook group for employees of the dental practice. If you're actively working in a practice and you are a team member, doctor, hygienist, that group is called Dentistry's Treatment Planning and Presentations. And I go over how we can be more successful in scheduling, case acceptance, conversations, and I'm really working hard to try to build a community that is active with resources and all things. So find me on social media or my website. I feel it's very helpful, no matter if you're looking for coaching, speaking, or any type of fractional operations help. My website is pivotalsolutionsnow.com. So find me there, and I also have some free resources linked at the bottom of my website. I am findable. You can reach me in any of these places.
And I will be sure to link all of that in the show notes, so we'll make it super easy for them to find you as well. As we're wrapping this episode up here, we end every episode with our signature question, which is, in your career, what has been your decoding moment or secret code that has allowed you to be successful?
off the hip here. It's attitude. If I didn't have the right attitude and I didn't have the drive, that's just me. I want to be the best. I want to know the best. And if something comes across in front of me that, oh, that looks like that would make that better, or this is definitely the way it should be getting done. Like, my attitude, I think, has been my secret sauce, as they would say, to just have the drive. And that's not to say, just like at the beginning of the episode, there were tears. Sometimes people try to tell you there's no crying in dentistry. That's not true. Like, I had plenty of tears. But just to be able to pick yourself back up, have the drive to push through, keep wanting better for yourself. Because when you can have better for yourself professionally, that's going to impact your team. It's going to impact your practice. It's going to impact your patients. And we should be doing what we're doing because of our patients and how we serve them, how we show up for them. And that's what's amazing about dentistry, like the science, the technology, the resources. Dentistry is different every day. So have the right attitude and have the drive. And I always commend people and I applaud people just like yourself that's trying to have tools and resources for dentistry and bringing people together. Just have the right attitude. And when you have some stinking thinking, call a friend and vent and get it all out. But then push that reset button and be like, okay, we're going to get back at this. We can do better. So that's what I will say.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I can't wait to get this out to our audience. And just can't thank you enough for taking some time.
I appreciate you both, and I'll see you on the other side.
Thank you so much for joining us for this week's episode of Dental Decoders podcast. We hope you took away a valuable piece of information. As always, don't forget to rate, share, and subscribe to help us build our community of dental decoders. We look forward to seeing you for next week's episode.